The first place I'd like to start with a provocation, we're here to talk content, is some words from a guy called Todd Yellin, who's the VP of Innovation at Netflix. We will probably have been familiar with Netflix, having been chased by their ads all over the internet by now. But what he says is that age and gender are almost useless. There's 19-year-old guys who watch Dance Moms, and there's 73-year-old women who watch Breaking Bad and Avengers. So it's not always what you think of, oh, I'm targeting Kenyans 18 to 35 in this demographic, or young men or young women. Their online behavior, their data, what we studied for the report, tells its own story. I will say something about the data we have. We responsibly sourced it, transparently, stored it and so on. So it's important to just say that because it can sound like black magic from up here. This is the number of gigabytes, a billion, that we're expected to cross by 2022. In 2018, Kenyans crossed the 270 million gigabytes a year threshold. The whole point of all of these stats is just to share with you that data is a pretty big commodity here, traded back and forth on all these websites and so on. You have companies like Techno and Infinix and their parent company Transsion Group, who are not just delivering hardware now, but are also delivering software. So expect lending apps, expect kind of music streaming experiences, and this sort of set of companies from China specifically, are opening up and competing in a way that was previously unexpected, especially on the continent. This year, if you can't really see it that clearly, there's two words at the top of the slide there that I hope will provoke you, that all the data that we see is there to really, again, just spark some interest. People pay to have WhatsApp installed for them in the year 2020. And sometimes Kenya is called Silicon Savannah, but every day this happens. I went on Shafi and Adele's show before Adele left and some things changed. And Shafi almost didn't move past this point when we were talking about Nendo's report. And so he asked listeners, he said, who pays for WhatsApp? What's wrong with you? And somebody reached out and said, wait, Shafi, that's our hustle. This guy said, on a bad day, I have 8 people, and I charge them 200 bob to reinstall WhatsApp or to install it for the first time. So the point of this is to show you that it means so much to stay connected. We talk about content being king. It means that much to stay connected, but you have unexpected insights that come to you from Kenya and from the region, that it's not just that we just adopt technology smoothly, but this is the story. All right, I have what I call the 5 S's. That's really what I'm here to present. The basis is that if you give a Kenyan 100 megabytes, 10 megabytes, or 100 gigabytes, these are the 5 things you can expect them to do. And I'll request to kind of go through it a bit quickly. I guess before I should answer that is this question. If there's anyone from the Communications Authority, I'm going to apologize in advance because your stats just pale in comparison really to some of the others that are here. I think a lot more diplomatic in the report, but we don't have 43 million internet users, but it is clear how that number was arrived at based on the methodology, right? So I can only empathize that if you use that methodology, you're going to get there, but you should not expect to see us cross the 45 or 47 million Kenyans online phrase, because the census has just come out. We don't have that many internet users, unfortunately. What we do have, as you'll see here, is about 13 or 15 million odd. That's a number from Google. It's a number I prefer to use. All right, the 5 S's are search. Not a surprise, Google's the most visited website. Android's the most frequently used smartphone operating system. This one should surprise you, sport. So of the last decade, the most Googled word in Kenya has only changed once. So from 2004 to 2015, it was the word Kenya. Kenya news, Kenya football, Kenya entertainment, Kenya music. 2016, 2017, 2018, it became the word Sport Pesa. One company, dominant in its category, displacing and becoming the most Googled thing, even in an election year. So what this teaches you or tells you is that sports betting is among the single biggest sources of just internet consumption generally. If I'm not placing a bet, I'm researching what I need to do to place one. And there's a lot we could say about that, but I'll leave that for later. The next one is adult websites. So the top 10, only Tanzania has an adult website ranked higher than Kenya. But this is kind of strange. You don't have a lot of countries. It's common in Africa to have at least one adult website in the top 10. Kenya has 2, and so does Tanzania. And that tells its own story about the kind of content we're looking for. We have a client who's in the sexual and reproductive health space, and they did some research and showed us that people don't just go there, obviously, for what you'd imagine, which is, the videos. They go there for education. So it's a form of sex education. They want to please their partner, etc. I find people concluding too few things about this for my liking. Next is social media. I'll keep this one short. And then the last one is stories. So it's not just the vertical visual format, but generally our appetite for local content. And that's why you have this panel up here to share and give provocations and reflections. An interesting thing about local content is the word leakage trends every November while candidates are sitting their exams. And they're not looking for plumbing advice, okay? They're looking for leaked exam papers. And I know that biology has been, for 2 years running, the most searched for thing. So this is just telling you, the CS always says we have a zero tolerance policy on cheating, but clearly Kenyans want that. That's the stories format. And to bring it in, that's all the 5 S's. These are the top sites. Allow me to fly through this. Betika replaced SportPesa. So some people thought, SportPesa doesn't operate anymore. Well, guess what? Nature abhors a vacuum. So ODBets and SportPesa took the place of BetPower and the 2 that left, a couple more adult websites, some news websites in the top 20. And if I'm not mistaken, this is my final bit. This is, I think, what we're here to do, help you learn, unlearn, and relearn. So pardon me for flying through. We got some great people here. I want to hear from them too. We have a YouTube channel. You can get some stuff. That's where to get the report. The slides are available and they're free. This report is free. Please get it. It's 56 pages made for you. It means nothing more to us if you just picked it, took screenshots of it, used it for your research, your work. With that said, let's get to the panel. So everyone else is here. Let's do it.
Thank you very much, Mark. Give Mark a round of applause. So, Mark, before we begin, maybe for someone who doesn't know, what is the importance of getting to understand the trends in content consumption? What is the importance of that?
Yeah, sure. So I think for us, when we're looking at trends, we're trying to make predictions. We're trying to adjust our behavior, or we're trying to cater to what I call unmet needs or latent needs. It's a need that's there, but then hasn't been fully satisfied. So you have the 5 S's, which, as we said, are search, sport, sex, social, and stories. So within that, we feel that brands, businesses, nonprofits, whoever, government, can find a way to engage and use and build on that. So I think the reason to try to study the trends and the data, in our view, is to make adjustments. We know we have a market here, for example, that if you look at gengetone specifically as a subgenre, a form of kind of, and I'd love to hear Dan says about this, kind of resistance to society. It's not lost on me that this hashtag Ifikie Wazazi, let it reach to the parents, happened on Twitter with Gen Y basically calling out Gen Z for things they did. They just didn't record on video. Yeah. So I think the idea there is that you have so many little questions to ask. I mean, right now, if you look at just some of the threads that are the more popular in different parts of, I say Twitter specifically because it's a bit more niche. I mean, sharing and sex and just the people exploring their sexuality on somewhere on there is very interesting to me. You look at videos that have been, taken down on YouTube right now. This is why we study trends, so we can look back at that and say, well, Mdundo, what are some of the top songs telling us? Is gospel, disappearing? So for us, we study it so we can make future adjustments. Thanks.
Thank you very much for that. I want to know, in the digital age, this one is for you. In the digital age, the trends, they're not things you can just say that tomorrow this and that will be trending. So how would you guide a content creator when it comes to creating content in line with what's trending?
The simple answer to that question is that you have to do content that will go against the trend. Because if you try to make content, the internet space is moving so fast that if you try to make content to catch up with that current trend, it changes before you publish your content. So the best approach, at least in my view, is you have to make something that starts a new trend or that goes in a different direction so that you can affect the existing trend. I don't think if you kind of just wait to learn it, it will be a very sustainable way to produce content.
Okay, awesome. Now, still talking about the digital age for you, you said that whatever you're doing, it's like trying to understand the global market. And how do you feel the digital age has affected content consumption?
Well, I think one of the most interesting things we've seen with a kind of China perspective, India perspective, and also I think places like Latin America, is as these big digital platforms roll out, obviously YouTube and Spotify being the big two, we see actually the trend of sort of English language repertoire. It used to be received wisdom that English language repertoire was the global dominant kind of force, and now the global internet and global platforms have shown that's just really not the case. And actually, if you look at the top 10 artists at any one time on YouTube globally, I mean, I think the last time I checked, 5 of them were Indian, and a lot obviously coming from Latin America as well. And I think it's truer now than ever that music is a global sort of language, really. And actually that music is crossing over more and more between languages. And I think as well, you see a lot of people, huge amount of collaborations as well, like artists are sort of adapting to this new paradigm by saying, okay, actually, a lot of albums these days have a collaboration on every track. They're literally kind of saying, okay, we want to cross over with this artist, we want to reach out to this artist's audience, and it's being responded to really positively. So music is now this big global melting pot, and hits can come from anywhere, and the consumer has shown to be open to music from anywhere.
Okay, from a very thin line of thought, do you feel like the digital age has affected more in a positive way or more in a negative way when it comes to content consumption?
Well, I think from a music industry perspective, we've been chasing our tails. I think it used to be the case that we were dictating what people could listen to and where and how, and it was because we're making a CD and putting it down a distribution pipeline, and we were plugging radio, and it was basically telling the consumer what they could do. And now, obviously, it's completely the reverse. It's absolutely about what the consumer wants, and we're sort of chasing their habits. And I think nothing better represents that than things like live streaming now, short video content, things like TikTok, for example. The industry still, I mean, you go into any marketing meeting in the world now at a label, and half the conversation is about TikTok and influencer marketing. And this is a very new arrival, and the music industry it still hasn't licensed these platforms properly. It's simply saying, okay, well, where is the consumer? What are they doing? And then how do we kind of like optimize for those channels? I personally think it's a really exciting situation to be in. The way the music is being consumed is really vibrant and kind of interactive and creative, and it is up to us as an industry to kind of work our way into those channels and optimize for that space. It's a really exciting time, I think.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, coming to you, will you mention like one of the main things that you've noticed when you're doing your research, one of the main things you noticed in terms of the trends in consumption, and you said that this is one thing that has been going on, this has been going on, and it will still be going on?
Yeah, sure. So it's a good time to be doing this reflection. Nendo is releasing a 2020 trend report on the 13th of March. And I can give you a sneak peek of just what some of those are. So TikTok is one of them. And in fact, there's kind of 3 apps all really, really competing for Kenyan youth. Why? Well, Facebook, despite being the leading social network, they've got just shy of 10 million monthly active users right now. There's nothing really stopping them or their growth, but they have hit what some believe to be a bit of a ceiling in terms of monthly active users. So people at least teenagers are expected not to join as quickly. And they, some of you may have heard people call it mom book now because they're like, well, that's for you guys, not for our guys. Facebook started in 2004. So when you hear it like that, you're like, okay, makes sense. But for TikTok, they are, to me, a bit of an underdog here. And the reason I say that is because 3 apps, both from the Asia broadly, Likey, which is from a Singapore-based company that was bought by a Chinese company. You have Vskit, which is owned by Transsion Group, who you heard me mention briefly. Then you have TikTok. Now those 3, if you look at the 3 apps, they look almost exactly the same. It's very hard to distinguish them. Each one of them comes to influencers and says, we will coach you, train you, equip you, and inspire you to get commercial deals. We won't pay you, but we can open up some things inside of our ecosystem for you to get paid. So I've spoken at, when TikTok came into town, we collaborated on a creator meetup for them. And when you meet these creators, some of them are they're doing okay. And it's because people in Southeast Asia are loving their, material. They're doing duets with them. The reason I think TikTok has the long-term advantage is because they have Western influencers. So I think because it's broken out in the US, just the type of people from there that are coming on, real heavy hitters from YouTube, real heavy hitters from Snapchat. Vskit has the download advantage. So I can tell you for 2019, Vskit had 2 times as many downloads in Kenya as TikTok did. And that's because they ship the hardware themselves. So they can ship it on their own devices and promote it to Techno, Infinix, and Spice devices. So if you're looking at short-form video, Likey is also like an underdog, but they're really handing it to these guys and making it competitive. So if you're a young teenager now, you've got 3 places to share your video, go viral, and each one of them is saying, hey, we'll give you a new music and dance to do this week. We'll give you a challenge, and if you do right, we may connect you to a brand to get you paid. And this is all before you turn 18.
Yeah, but then talking about all that people can do, there's one thing I need to understand as a creator too. How do creators go about the fact that nowadays the consumers, if you've seen, they have little time for poor experiences?
Yeah, I mean, the thing I tell anyone who's creating like a digital experience, like an app or anything like that, there's no such thing as a Kenyan app. People aren't as forgiving anymore, right? Or you're on the information superhighway, everything is global or held to that standard. I do think for content, I mean, I differ with the point of view that there's such a thing as a shorter or short attention spans. I think people just economize their attention a lot faster and better. So what I'd say is when the content isn't good, you keep scrolling. And obviously for the 3 I mentioned, Vskit, TikTok, and Likey, just look for any one of these if it sounds like Greek. They are really amazing apps. You don't have to sign in to get going, and you can really quickly get, entertained. You can smile. You'll see some local people. I think, you have. I think Jugush right now is promoting Vskit across his Instagram. Then you have the organic TikTok guys who their material crosses over into WhatsApp so often. And these are like people who they don't have a big name. They're not a big influencer, but they are so good at making content, and they're going viral within TikTok. It's the only social network I know of. You can start now here at ONGEA, and by the time the sun is setting today, your video could be doing better than maybe anyone in the country. And you started today for the first time. You can't join Twitter and have that happen to you. You can't join Facebook and really have that happen to you. So there's a new algorithm and paradigm there that just says if you make content that people like and find interesting, or you'll go places and get the rewards that are due to you.
Okay, thank you. Still on the poor experiences, though, when it comes to content creating, it's really funny because you find that many people are out there, they are creating content, but then people still trust social media when it comes to content creation more than any other, media. So why is that? Why do you think that's the case? People still, we're having things like fake news online, but still people are trusting social media when it comes to content creation.
I think Mark might have mentioned that we are in connection. We like to connect with each other. I don't know if it was Mike who did, but we are keen on just being connected with each other. We also have this, we like to watch what's happening, the sort of voyeuristic side of tendencies. So it does make sense that would be the case for social media. just, yeah.
And to you, do you think it's really important for brands to deliver personalized content and just create it for the users?
Well, I think that's a really difficult line to walk. It used to be a really sort of clumsy route of, brands just dropping a ton of money and people, I think that, the key element to content is authenticity. And the idea of things going viral, for example, and content on short form video platforms is people want authenticity. I mean, but actually, I hate to come back to TikTok again, but like we do a lot of work with TikTok in India, for example, and we're kind of trying to find ways to get people to interpret music that we represent. And then you get huge brands who kind of do activations around hashtag challenges, for example. I mean, recently Pepsi did a challenge in India with a local hip-hop artist. And it was, you had to do a particular dance move to a particular song, and at the end you had to drink out of a Pepsi, thing like that. It just kind of was a sweet spot, and it worked. That campaign got 22 billion impressions. 22 billion impressions in India. And that works really well, but I think for every campaign that does work well, there's a million that just really are clunky, and frankly, the audience that, in this kind of attention economy we're talking about now, that people just sniff out stuff that isn't authentic. They sniff out stuff that doesn't, that there's a sort of subtext to it, and they'll just scroll on, So it's a very difficult line to walk, but when it's done well, it obviously is incredibly impactful.
Maybe, what's your take on that?
I mean, I definitely love to get his. I think the same way Wanjiku said. So I think this idea of, we love to convene, and he's just mentioned how authenticity is so key. I think social media is this place where you're just trying to see, do you think what I think? Do you feel the same way? So that song is playing. That song has a super offensive line. Are they gonna bring it down? Did you hear about that? Can I share that in my WhatsApp group? You have to see me share it, so we can all get offended, or see me share it and say, yeah, that's how we feel. Boy child's being let down, or whatever, like the hot take of the day is. But I think there's this performance element of people now playing to a crowd. So this idea that like I'm gonna deliberately do something to because I know it's gonna get you guys talking. And this is I think this is not a very good example. Some people call this clout chasing, but there was these guys, I think it's last year, where after the issues with femicide, right? So young women who going through these terrible ordeals, and some of them actually losing their lives. You had basically somebody, I think, a couple guys make a song about, I'm gonna forget it, but it's, I think it's Kukata Nashoka or something like that. And it was, look, I mean, you hear, they did this whole thing, they refused to apologize, they did a whole YouTube reveal apology after, did the video get taken down? I don't remember. But to me, I look at that and I say, that wasn't just done like in a lab, that was done to get a reaction from you, to get you to share it, to get it to go on social media, to get Ezekiel Mutua to come out and say, I hereby, ban that song. No, but genuinely. So I hate to say like they didn't know what they were doing. They did. And then, of course, they're like, okay, now that I have this clout, can I get some shows? Can my manager book me, for somewhere? Can I launch my next single? So it's a thing I think that's been happening. I'd love to get your take on it too.
No, and actually that's a very interesting way to look at it. I think what has happened with digital in the music space in an industry such as Kenya is that because we did not have the traditional distribution infrastructure, we didn't have the traditional sales infrastructure, we don't have the copyright protection that's required, what digital and short-form videos and all this stuff has created for the consumer here is more touch points for the creator. So we're able to find the people we love faster and find them more often on these apps, which is something that the audience was craving, but it was not possible 10 years ago, 15 years ago. It was absolutely, completely invisible. And one of the best examples in the recent past was Kenwa Maria's song, Fundamentals. That song would have come out any other time, and it would have gone up, become very popular, and disappeared. But because then digital took it up, it crossed over and went into spaces that you would not have expected that song to go to. And there are many other songs, SDA choirs now are coming back. Because now finally we can, like you're saying, we can share the choir, and then you find, oh, I'm not the only one who likes choirs, and then this thing, which is really good to some extent. I know that there are some challenges for the creator point of view. They sometimes don't know exactly what to do. And then you have situations like those that a traditional A&R person would have fixed, right? We would have known what to do to get the clout we're looking for in a better way. But because there's no A&R, the guys are kind of leading themselves. And so they're like, we just need to trend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Maybe just a quick example I think that the audience will pick up on recently. And I think it's a great illustration of this. So, King Kaka, Wajinga Nyinyi, right? Everybody knows where they were, and it was the hashtag that just started it and was like, whoa, because it was not enough to watch the song. I mean, I watched the song. First place I went to on YouTube is the comments. I'm like, I'm gonna have the video up here. I wanna scroll through every comment, right? And then after that, I'm sharing it. So I'm going into other places. I think Boniface Mwangi shared it on Twitter. That's maybe where I discovered it. The hashtag comes out. Then after you have the remixes. So now you have new people saying it, and you even have the phrase Wajinga Nyinyi being used by activists, whoever else. So it's like a coded language. And I think, the question now is, okay, yes, he did a video. Yes, it's on YouTube. How do we get like that exclusive, of the audio or the different takes or compilations and challenges? Basically, how do you take it to the next level?
So it's true to say that the digital era is controlling what the creators create.
Yeah, I'd love to hear everyone else. I'd say that.
I don't know if that's the case.
I'd love to hear this maybe from
and
the
we're talking
Mdundo
about this
perspective.
backstage, that Mdundo being a music service, with all the analytics and data we have on the back end, you're able to see what the users are listening to and what they want, and that sort of determines what becomes popular. And you find DJs doing mixes. That's the most you consume thing on the platform is mixes. And we're just talking about how, for instance, on matatus, the music listened to in matatus is what then becomes big and then goes on radio. So it's the user saying what they want, and then everybody catching on and coming to say, actually, let's sort of push.
Don't you feel like at some point it's making the creator lose its significance, because they're supposed to create something for the consumers? When you're starting maybe creating something, you are like, I want to do this for this kind of people.
I, on the contrary, I think it's empowering them, because you're speaking to your people, and the fact that you either blow up or they'll respond to you in downloads and streams, in views, whatever it is, you get instant sort of gratification, if that's the word.
What happened to creativity, maybe?
That's what I'm saying. I think they end up being supported because you're doing this thing, it's very creative, it's very cool, and the people will respond. They'll consume your content.
Okay.
If I can just support what Wanjiku is saying, what the apps and digital is doing is shortening the distance and time between when you release content and when you get feedback. And that's really cool, it's really empowering. So like she's suggesting now, if you put something out and there's downloads and there's one download, okay, and there's 2 streams, and then there's 1,000 comments of go back to the drawing board, there's a message, right? So you know what you are doing, you know that this hasn't worked, and you can go back to the drawing board. I don't see that as a bad thing. I think that it's always existed. Remember, content production started on stage. I'm a live performer. I performed for many, many years. On stage, you can't cheat. On stage, you're either good and everybody can see it, or you're struggling and everybody can see it. So there are no filters. There's nothing you can do to improve the performance. Either you prepared or you did not. So digital is somewhat making that connection again, where you're almost on stage all the time, which is what also was being said earlier about authenticity. People are looking for that unvarnished, clean, real content.
And direct from the source at that event.
Okay. Looking at the future now, what is the future of content consumption in Kenya, maybe?
Yeah, sure. I think the biggest barrier is still megabytes. So to me, the price of connectivity is still the biggest barrier. So we've got a number of clients. Safaricom is one of them, and the times that we, when we're doing research or just getting insights, the times we take the closest attention is like when Eliud Kipchoge is running on the 12th of October, and for that day, for that race, the bundles are free, right? So the connectivity is free. And when you watch people's behavior, there's a lot we learn out of that. The World Cup, leading up to the final, you're able to buy a 99 shilling package, stream through Kwese. Now what that just did right there when you were uncapped, right? Again, very interesting trends being seen there. I still think the biggest barrier is that in India, for example, there's a telecoms company, that disruptor called Jio, and there's a phone and data package they have that has completely and radically transformed the market. And to me, I hope we get that sort of moment. I'm not holding my breath, but not in a bad way. But I think if we get this, let's say it's the merger of Airtel and Telkom, whatever it is that just stirs the pot, I think the key question is the consumer wins when they start competing so aggressively to give you an open opportunity. YouTube, for example, partnered with Safaricom, I think last year at some point in April, and they had a specific amount of data you could only redeem on YouTube. Now, if you're overseas, net neutrality, that's a red flag. I have mixed feelings about it, but what I like is it started to remove those inhibitions we have of, I can't stream that, or, my data is going to disappear. You either use it or lose it, only on YouTube. And so it was teaching and rewiring people's behavior. And I think the more of that happens and the lower the connectivity gets, the faster the devices, the better for content creators, the better for content consumers.
I see unagusa mic.
Yeah, because Tanzania is a very good example of what you're discussing. The government did some things in Tanzania that forced the telcos to compete on price. And so this has pushed the price of internet down. And you can see the Tanzania numbers of internet usage are off the charts. Like Instagram in Tanzania is unbelievable. YouTube, if you spend 1,000 Tanzanian shillings, I think you get the whole week, which is...
it's like 50 shillings.
That's 50 shillings, yeah. You get the whole week on YouTube. I mean, it's crazy. And what they've done there, you can just see it in the content. So immediately, a video comes out from Tanzania, and suddenly, just the amount of views. Yeah. Because it's so cheap, it's so accessible for people to do it. And the second thing they did, which I think Mark touched on, they forced the telcos to compete on price, but then they also standardized kind of connectivity quality across the country. So there's no one network that's stronger than another network per se. At least in theory, that's what they told me when I went. But I found that really opened up consumption of content, and especially consumption of music content, because as soon as that type of thing happens, you start to see diversification in what people are looking for. Safaricom, because of that partnership, if you look at the top 10 searched words on YouTube now, they're completely different to what they were before this partnership. Because people have now gone to YouTube, now it's for entertainment, when it was previously maybe for news or for something else. So now people are not looking for Sonko, now they're looking for something else, because they want to laugh or...
Maybe you can share your sentiments on that regarding the future of content consumption.
Yeah, so obviously I can't predict in East Africa particularly. I've been here for 48 hours. So, but in terms of what we've seen in China and India, 5-6 years ago in China, well maybe 6 or 7 years ago, there was still the sentiment that no one will pay for digital content because it comes from a history of total piracy there, for example. But then the streaming platforms started developing, things like all the friction points like the payment systems, that was all solved. And slowly you started seeing people actually paying for a premium subscription in China, which was kind of miraculous. Now there's something like 50 million people paying $1.50 a month in China, which is, in a country that big, is not a huge number, but actually it really is the beginning of something very exciting. So we would say that China is now, at base camp of a really steep ascent. And in India, we've seen exactly the same thing happen, a history of piracy, but then as Mark was saying, the Jio launch in the end of 2016, they spent $23 billion in setting up their own 4G network around India. They then crashed the price of data to effectively free for 4G. I mean, back in the UK, I get messages saying you're about to hit your limit of data. In India, suddenly you had 200 million people who'd never been on the internet before, who were suddenly using like a $30 Chinese smartphone with free unlimited 4G on it. they were all pouring onto YouTube, and you just see people wandering around the streets just watching YouTube. You know, every time they get a spare minute, they'll just whip up YouTube and just stream it. And you know, that's an amazing kind of moment. And it really, in India now, you say before Geo and after Geo, effectively, in terms of where the market's at. So you've got something like 500 million people on mobile data in India now. But in terms of the future, we've seen China kind of go through this period of saying people won't pay for premium content. Now they absolutely will, and the whole industry and everyone is aligned around the idea that we've got to get behind that changing that consumer behavior. In India, I still hear people there say, well, Indians will never pay for premium content. I kind of disagree with that, actually, and I think that once you get rid of all the friction points, like enabling recurring payments, for example, is a huge issue. They're fixing that problem, and I think in India now you've got something like 2 million paying subscribers for premium audio platforms, which is really nothing at all. But in India you've also got a 400 million people middle class, where people are very happy to go and spend $3 or $4 on a Starbucks coffee. So the idea of $1.50 a month for a subscription is frankly, you know, it's off the bottom end of people's disposable income considerations. But to answer your question actually more directly, what the future is, in China what we see is, yes, there are people paying $1.50 a month. So the average revenue per user of a premium thing is $1.50 a month. If you look at the average revenue per paying user of virtual gifting, as in people paying for virtual gifts and throwing them at live streamers, the average revenue per paying user is $18 a month in China. More than 10 times what those same people are paying for all of the music in the world on a premium tier. When you kind of go down that route of building an audience, creating content, and there's a mechanism for people to, in a frictionless way, for them to sort of say, okay, I want to throw a bunch of roses at you, or whatever the gift might be, people just spend and spend and spend. You know, because monetizing fandom is effectively what it's called. The idea of like having a no-limit expression of your fandom of an artist, that is what's driving the Asian music industry. The whole kind of industry now is aligned around the idea that, frankly, $1.50 a month, if for all the music in the world, is massively underpricing music. And that if you give people the ability and the channels through which to express their fandom for a particular content creator, that there is now precedent for people to spend $18 a month doing that, which is an insane amount of money in somewhere like China. So I know you can't just transpose those consumer behaviors elsewhere in the world, but I think as a global industry, we're starting to get behind the idea that things like live streaming and virtual gifting and monetizing fandom is really the next kind of front line of the global music industry. And as an industry, we're trying to sort of solve that problem.
Wow. Wanjiku, you have anything to say about that?
He's kind of covered it. What I was going to say is that it's similar, and just what you're saying about Tanzania is that for us, Tanzania is one of our biggest markets, and it's because of how accessible getting online is in the digital space. And like airtime and the bundles is so much cheaper there, so it just makes sense. If it was to happen here in the country we're in, it would skyrocket as well in terms of consumption online.
Wow. I don't know if time is on our side. So, yeah. We're going to go into a bit of Q&A from the audience. You introduce yourself and just make sure you stand up and just ask any question to my team here. Anyone maybe?
Hi, my name is Okinda Andal. My stage name is Miss Okinda. I'm a performer in Gravity Band. So I'm going to try and structure this question. Because my strength is on stage. So I don't know how, I think I have two questions. This thing about this, like when something is on trend, is trending, and then you do something that's against the trend so that you can be ahead of the trend. Did I understand that right? Is that really authentic if you're not doing you? I don't know. Alafu, people come on. I'll give an example of our own music. We did a song with Nameless. But
make sure you don't plug in, Make sure you don't do plugins when you're asking questions.
All right.
Okay.
I'm going to go there.
Yeah.
We did a song with Nameless that I personally feel is not us. If you come on stage and you find Gravity Band and that song is you know. So people loved that song, there was all those views, and then they come and then they find roots, rock, reggae, and they're like, sweetie, when are you playing Sweetie, you know? So have you like lied to your people? Are you gonna lose them? Like, you know, yes, that was the question. There you go.
Okay. Let's take a second question, maybe, so that we can answer both of them. Someone at the back, I saw your hand.
Hi, how are you? So we know in Africa, I know it's a problem world over, but more particularly within Africa, that we have a huge problem with piracy. With looking at the stats that you presented, how do you think that the illegal sites and all those pirated sites affect the outcome of the audience consumption? Because surely that should have a huge impact in terms of what actually is what the audience is consuming.
Okay, thank you very much. I kind of feel like the first one was was directed to Dan. So Dan.
So I think it's an artist and repertoire challenge. Artist and repertoire is basically, I don't know the best way to say it, strategic planning for your music and for your content that you create. And I think in situations where you collaborate, there's always going to be some dilution of what you essentially are when you work with somebody else. And if you look at the dilution as a negative, the positive is that you then also are adding these other aspects of a different artist who will open you to a new market. So it's a thing that I think in the music industry, where the music industry is going now, is a really important part of the business. I don't personally see it as a lack of authenticity. I see it more as an advert. You're making an advert to an audience that may not see you in any other way. So they will see you through this song, and then you can bring them onto what your sound is proper. The best example of this type of thing, and even the world over what's happening now, is there's a lot of, if you look at the last decade or last 2 decades of music in the States, for instance, you'll see that there's been a trend of all this importation of sounds that was sparked by one guy, Buju Banton, when he started working with Def Jamaica, and they started to make that Def Jamaica album, but it sparked a sound. So Busta Rhymes was on a sound that was different. Hip-hop changed. Beyonce was on a sound that was different. R&B began to change. Now today, if you hear the music that's coming out of America even now, it's got all this Caribbean influence that was sparked by that original collaboration. So it's really, I feel like if you're trying to build your music into a specific market, some of this, mixing, hybrid content will be necessary.
Okay, the second one, maybe? The second question?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I can keep it quick, and I'd love to hear what the other guys think. I think it's about what I might call a broken value chain, right? So I think audiences appreciate the content that's out there. There's a talk I gave, it sounds like a lifetime ago, at I think it was called, the conference is called Music Entertainment Africa in 2011 in Cape Town. And I don't think I'd ever done so much research about a talk before. But I talked to recording artists, I talked to the people at Cellulant and a couple of the premium rate service providers, and just contrasted between Uganda, Tanzania, where at that point there was a feeling that people actually paid out of pocket and made sacrifices to get money into an artist's basically vicinity, compared to here where piracy was there at the time. I think the recurring payments question is one that hasn't fully been solved, but is partly there. So mine would be, I think it's shifted us from, I'm going to do an album, and the album is going to then unlock a whole set of value for me as an artist, to I want to do a single, I want to tour, I'm going to take shows. And like he said, if the strategic planning and A&R is there, even with the piracy, it's aiding your cause, because you weren't expecting to collect purely from the kind of the streams and the royalties of the single. And then the last part I'd probably say, so I feel artists in that way have adapted, but the last part where there's a full kind of closed loop is ringback tunes and skiza tunes. So I think that has made some artists, I hear when you look at the top paid ones, you have some vernacular, you have some gospel, you have some surprise acts that are killing it across the country, very silently picking up those royalty checks because it's a closed loop. So to me, I'd say it's still one of the bigger challenges here. I think there's technology that's helping get us there, but the artists have adapted, in my understanding, to where the piracy is actually aiding their awareness efforts because they don't purely necessarily collect there, but they collect with shows and touring and so on. Would love to hear the Mdundo perspective.
That's kind of a nice segue, because what we've done, You'll Fight Piracy is the #1 competitor that a service like Mdundo would have. And it's taking away revenue from these artists who'd be collecting. So what we have sort of done as Mdundo is over the past 6 months, we sort of, all these websites, okay, before I say that, consumers, in our opinion, on how we've seen, Google, they'll go search, as you're saying, you'll search for a track. If you find it, whatever website comes up is what you're going to use. A lot of the times, if the search engine is not optimized, it will be a website that's not legit, right? So what we're trying to do is, and we've partnered, we just announced this not too long ago, is that we are working to shut down these links at these websites that are then not sharing the revenues that they make off the music on their sites with the artists and with the content creators. And what that is then doing is forcing audiences to then go to like legitimate sites. It's forcing them to, like websites basically, when you search a song, then YouTube will come up, Mdundo will come up, or wherever the artist has chosen to have their music will come up, and sort of just helping feed the channel to the right place and fight piracy.
Okay, thank you very much. This side, questions? Unaweza uliza na Kiswahili, usiogope.
Hi guys, I have a question. I'm Alex. I'm doing gospel minister. I have a question to you panels. I have a problem with when you create a content, then in any way you put in Viscuit or TikTok, and in your own way you are coming from a poor background, but someone from a rich person or anyway, you steal that content and you put it in your own way, but you steal from my idea. Like, for example, this lady, she claims that the new song of Tanasha and Diamond, that they stole the idea of the video content. And, for example, Mangi's Anger, when Harmonize steal the beats, you see, that content. How do you deal with those problems?
Done? Okay, maybe another question before that. Maybe another question. Another question. Thank you.
Hi guys, my name is Ronnie Andabwa. I'm a content creator on YouTube. My question is, how do you get your audience back, especially when you decided to take a break and the break was like extra long, then you went back and posted a video and you're now getting like 2-3 views compared to the 10 views you had. Thanks.
Okay, one more question. This side, maybe, one more question. Thank you.
Greetings. My name is Mdundo, also known as Mayor. I'm in the management, artistry management, mostly with the street DJs and stuff. So I had some response from the lady about the DJs, the street DJs, how they distribute content. Actually, I'm trying to compare it with from the Nendo, I think, the question about these apps. You see, with the with the content creation on those apps, chances of the artist or the creator getting, making profit from them or getting something from them, chances are 50-50, or even, let's say 0, because you look at it from both directions. As compared to the others who distribute offline, for example, the street DJs or the DJs, which is a bit different because maybe the content is sold on physical Kwama Flash Disk and other places. So I was trying to see, what is your advice for those people who are sharing content on those apps? Like also trying to relate with the question that my friend was asking about copyright, and if your content can be taken and someone else makes something in return or through that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I kind of think that the first one and this one were, the last one and his question almost related, right? We'll take that.
I'll start with a bit. So for the copyright question, and I think come tomorrow, there's a whole panel about copyright, right? But if you haven't protected your music, it's very hard to prove that you're the one who did it. And if you haven't registered with it with the services, Kikobo, whoever it is, then it's very hard to go and say, this is mine. Like, what proof do you have? So I think it's always important to just make sure you have covered the basis and you have some sort of proof that you're able to go and say, actually, this was me who did it at XYZ. A lot of the time when this comes up, the people who have copied are gonna pay. They're gonna be made to pay. There's societies that make them do that. Should I answer the other question? Or
Yeah, sure.
Okay. For the other question, first of all, I don't think you should have one sort of way of getting out your music. If you're gonna do digital, if you're gonna do physical, do it all, because it kind of just adds up to something. And I think if you're able to sort of identify who you are as a brand and find your people to sell to, it sort of just grows. So if you're sort of have a track on Mdundo, do your people know it's on Mdundo? Are you pushing it? Are you marketing it? Are you getting it out there? There's things we keep seeing gimmicks people doing to make their content become bigger and grow faster, things like those. So I think first cover all your bases, make sure it's available everywhere, and then just like keep pushing at it. Have your fans who you know what Wamta, you're like maybe a Facebook group of people who understand you, who know you, who are gonna give you feedback, honest feedback. And then once you have it out, just keep pushing it. Don't forget, because a lot of time what happens is that an artist will release a song, and this happens a lot, unfortunately, and then because it's up in the world, they don't just sit back and wait for like it to do its thing. But you're not talking about it, you're not getting it out there. And there's ways to do it without spending any money, actually.
Can I add a little bit on? So the copyright thing and the distribution thing is interesting because as a creator, my point of view in what I've seen in my time in the industry is that we have a distributor gap in this part of the world. So the consumers are looking for volume, but then the creators need budget to be able to deliver the volume. And so in between here, you have this situation where you're not able to produce enough content to match the demand. So then it's just creating a really space ripe for theft. And when it comes to music and things like, let's say a track that you've built, it's much harder for somebody to take that away from you, even on these apps, especially YouTube. YouTube, I think, has done a lot of work trying to make content ID so that if your song came out first, it can be compared to a song that comes out later and you can't fix. There are still some issues with that software. It's creating a lot of strange issues for people, especially when a big record label copies you, because the record label, YouTube assumes the record label is right. So then you have to fight. But then in the case of things like what happened with Magic Senga and what happened with that video, that's a completely different area of copyright infringement that I don't think has been the world hasn't properly dealt with it yet. As a performer, we create sets and we create specific things that are unique to us. And then if somebody else copies those things, there's really no way for us to copyright those things that I do as myself, right? But then if somebody copies it, I feel hurt because they've taken my idea. The challenge that we have is that this is something that has always been happening. So Michael Jackson, for instance, took some things from somebody else. And then a lot of people have taken things from Michael Jackson. A lot of the pop performances we're seeing today are basically rehashes of MJ's tour. Beyonce, Chris Brown, Asha, all these people are going back, taking dance styles, taking, lighting cues, everything is just coming back. So it is a challenge. What I would say that I'm trying to apply for myself, and I would encourage anybody else who's working in content, is now the challenge for us is to refine the work that we are doing so much that the edge is so sharp that it can only be you. And so then it's easier for the consumer to tell when there's a copy.
Yeah, thank you very much. Now to his question, how do you get your audience back? I don't know if you can answer that, or maybe you can.
There's no one for you, Alec.
Okay, thing is that I went through that phase actually. I'm also a content creator on YouTube. There's a time, I think, between mid last year to December, I wasn't doing anything. And then January, I started producing my content. 15 views, 35 views, 100 views. I think it's actually normal. But when it comes to your audience, as we said here earlier, is that the consumers are fast moving. They're not there just waiting for you to produce your content, because you're not the only one, trust me, who's producing that kind of content. There are people out here who are doing similar content, and maybe they're doing it better than you. So what I would urge you is just do your research, be consistent, and produce awesome content, and you'll be back on track. I think.
If I can recommend a couple of resources. I think when you choose to be a creator, when you choose to put yourself out there, when you choose to make yourself kind of vulnerable with this kind of performance art that social media and maintaining any public persona has kind of, in a weird way, become, you can be your biggest critic. And at the risk of giving you like a whole bunch of resources, it really matters to me about just people's mental health and just putting more tools in the toolbox you have as somebody who has to dig deep inside themselves to get, that genius, that creative spirit that you want to put out to the world through your art. So if I can recommend, I think 3 things, all of which I speak from experience. I kind of use them and frequent these resources. The first is a short video by a guy called Ira Glass. Ira Glass is the narrator and host of a podcast called This American Life. And you just want to search on Google for the phrase Ira Glass, The Gap. This video for me is as a creative, it's like one of the best 3 minutes you can invest in just learning to forgive yourself for how your work looks like now, because you're blessed with good taste. But the problem is that makes you evaluate the work you do now on that taste of it being there. And basically what he says is the gap in between is consistency and practice and kind of self-love and just really being committed to the craft of it. So to me, if you can look up Ira Glass's video called Ira Glass, The Gap, that one is free. It's on Vimeo. That's the favorite one I like. It's like a nice animation, but it's all over. And it's like a short audio of his. Just listen to it and let the words resonate. The second, I think, is tied to what Dan was saying, which is, is this copyright question, and I think to me the resources that have helped me, one of them is there's a video series called Everything is a Remix. It's a couple years old now, but you'll just see how little originality there is anymore. And that's okay. So we're not competing on something brand new. In fact, people tend to like something familiar, which is kind of weird. So there's something about that attention, a creative tension that you can find your own way to wrestle with when you view this Everything is a Remix video series. Then the last is a book, and it's a book which is, it's 2 books, sorry. One is called The War of Art. So not The Art of War by Sun Tzu, but not The Art of War, but The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield. That one will just give you, as I said, a mental health toolbox to look through what's called resistance. You've seen artists not show up on time, procrastinate, self-sabotage, build up what some would call unhealthy dependencies. This talks about the actual energy inside you that actually is the gift and the curse of being creatively guided as a person. So I love it. I read it probably once every 2-3 years. And then the last one is Steal Like an Artist. And that one I love. It's by this guy called Austin Kleon, because he says, if you're going to steal, because original ideas don't exist anymore, he's like, you need to do it well. You need to add value. Don't just copy. He's like, copying is lazy. Like, don't copy other people's stuff. Steal it and make it better. And as long as you're being consistent, hopefully one or all of these resources helps you get there. without kind of, losing your mind in the process? Thank you.
Yeah, because someone else once said that great, good filmmakers. I'm gonna use filmmakers as creatives. Good filmmakers, they copy. They steal ideas. But now the great one. Good. Let me come again. Good creators or filmmakers, they copy paste. But now the great ones, they just steal it and they make it better. So maybe you have your question answered. You good? Okay, last two questions. We have someone in the back.
Hi.
Hi.
Okay, so my question is about media in relation to underground artists. So we notice that mostly media plays what they think the people want in terms of something like gengeton. I'm sure it's to economize on it. But we have so many amazing artists who are considered underground that the media does not really expand their search and actually play their music and get them out there, because their music is online, but we do need the media to expose our work to the regular people. So is there something that can happen to that?
Thank you. Another question maybe? The front? Wow.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name is Wilson, and I'm a content creator. My question is, for my YouTube channels and all other websites that have uploaded my content, I have statistics and analytics showing me what I do every day. So my question is to our local, our local designated guys from Prisk, from Kekobo, from Pake, and from Mdundo. Is there a way that, at least for the many artists that we have, people should be having a follow-up of their analytics from their interface? Thank you.
Okay.
My name is Wildick. So my question is, from 2008 to 2019, there was a decrease in album sales, like in States. So in 2008, 500 million copies, equivalent copies were pushed. 2019, last year, there were like 112 million copies consumed. So this year, it's projected that it will decrease to 92 million, something of that sort, copies which will be sold, like in States. And you guys know States is a higher consumer of music and album sales. So my question is basically, why is there that decrease in album sales?
Okay, last question.
My question is from the guy from Outdustry. I just wanted to find out, first, do we have to be established to work with you guys?
Louder. Please, come up, please.
Yeah, I can't hear you.
Atukuski.
Do we have to be established to work with you guys? And do you are you guaranteeing success for an artist from here in the markets that you work in? Yeah, that's my question.
Okay, we're taking two now. One, two. Okay. In the meantime, okay, let's get to the 4 questions we have. An artist asked about the media not covering or not showcasing the upcoming artists. I'm going to talk about that in a few, but Dan is going to help me in that. Because at some point, Dan ulikuwa chini, right? And then at some point, ukafika juu. Was it the role of the media, or was it your role, or was it a double effort?
I think media has changed. I think what we have to accept for everybody who's starting music today is media has changed the way they operate, especially here. For instance, when my song first came out, it was, I mean, I did a lot of work offline, quote unquote. I played many gigs to make my song popular. But being on radio is really what was the key thing. Because what is true today and was true back then is you can be discovered on many different platforms, but the money is really on radio. Yeah? So, and that's why she's saying that there are many underground people that are not on radio. And that term underground really, I know it has many things, but really it talks about money. Because people understand that if I'm not on radio, it's hard for me to get gigs. It's hard for me to get high-paying gigs. So it's a challenge, and you'll discuss what the media is going to do about it. What I'll tell you is, in different markets, there are different solutions that people are trying out. Australia and New Zealand have a very interesting solution. They have a quota for local content, and that quota has a time limit. So you have to play a specific number of local songs, and you also have to play a specific number of new local songs, because they're trying to force the market to create a pipeline. Nigeria has a very highly enforced 90% quota that they enforce very forcefully. It's 90% on screen. If you make an advert, 9 out of 10 actors have to be Nigerian. So it's really highly enforced. We don't have that here. Tanzania is enforced by language because you have no choice. Wanaongea Kiswahili, so if you want to play in that market, you're going to have to get a translator. So there are these ideas that the world is trying. Kenya, unfortunately, I have not seen anything coherent in all my time to kind of fix that problem. But what I'll suggest for anybody who's working on music now is don't underestimate what you have. If you have 10 subscribers on YouTube, don't underestimate that. Please work with that as much as you can, because that's the basis you have. And you can reach 15 and you can reach 20. And that's really the way that you'll break through.
Okay, I'm going to touch on that. I'm going to give you everyone who's here a very good example. How many minutes today have you spent on radio and TV? If it's more than 3 hours, put your hands up. More than 3 hours. Radio and TV, more than 3 hours. We have like 2 of them. Okay, how many minutes have you spent on your phone? If it's more than 5 hours, put your hands up. On your phone, definitely. That tells you one thing as a creator. It's easier for you to reach your audience using your gadget more than going out there to the radio. It's true, that's where the money is. But before getting to where the money is, you need to get that audience. Are we together? So don't rush so much into, I want airplay. Let me tell you one thing, and this is a very cruel fact. Sijui kama mmesikia watu wakisema, wasanii ni wengi Kenya kuliko mafans. I don't know if you guys have heard such a thing in Kenya. That tells you one thing. It just tells you that it's not going to be easy for the media to play all the upcoming artists. So it's up to you as an upcoming artist to push yourself with what you have, and that is your social media, for the media to notice you. Correct me if I'm wrong. Okay, the next question was about being able to access analytics, right? Yeah, Mdundo?
So I'll speak for Mdundo. I won't speak for the rest. But you should, in Nihaki Yako, you should be able to see what your stats, your analytics. For Mdundo, which, by the way, is open to anybody. You can go and create your own plug. Sorry, I'm not supposed to plug, but you can create your own account. And every profile that is created has a back-end access to see the analytics. So you can track your downloads. You can see how many people are downloading your content. And you will see your revenues there as well.
Yeah, thank you. The next, maybe you want to...
I can add about the other guys. Abandon all hope. They are not going to be able to do it this year, next year, the year after. Unfortunately, they are too daft, they are too old. There's no hope. The CMOs, they're nowhere near. We tried in the last 2 years with my involvement on Packet to try and build that type of capability for a PRO here, but unfortunately, there isn't any energy. It's really expensive, so they're not gonna do it. I know for a fact that they wouldn't do it. So forget about it. Just live life knowing that's not coming.
Okay. There's a question from him. You said that there's been a trend of decrease in sales of music and albums in particular, right? Maybe you have anything to say about that?
I can do that one. I mean, so the industry was collapsing at that time. You know, I think in 2008, that was the bottom, that was the trough of the global music industry. It's actually been growing year on year now for 5 years straight. You know, in terms of album sales, the idea behind that obviously is that the album actually was kind of an artificial construct. You know, it's obviously an artistic statement, but it's also a sales product idea of packing albums with a lot of filler quite often, just with a couple of singles on there that it's just to sell at a higher price point. You know, and the internet unbundled that, obviously beginning with Napster, but iTunes very early on went down that route. People just don't consume albums. You do have the concept of, you know, equivalent album streams, but I don't know. I mean, ask yourself. I mean, how often do you listen to an album from beginning to end? I would argue that now it's a very rare thing for someone to actually do. Most people, in fact, a lot of artists now are just releasing singles. In fact, there's a marketing strategy called the waterfall release, which is where effectively you release you know, an album, but actually when it appears on something like Spotify, it's just got like one track in, and then they just release single after single until the album is kind of fully released. We work with a lot of artists that do that. It's a really creative way of doing things, and at the end of it, you have an album that's some kind of coherent artistic statement, but really it's consumed on a singles basis. So I guess like, albums are still there. You know, people still release albums. Your favorite artists are probably releasing albums. If you want to listen to them, listen to them. It just happens to be that the current paradigm is really optimized for singles. And a lot of artists are even releasing singles that are optimized so that the hook comes in before 30 seconds, so that people will get over the 30-second mark to trigger a payment on Spotify. So people are optimizing for that channel. But as I say, if you speak to any label in the world now, any significant label in the world now, they're feeling very, very confident about where the music industry is heading based on the streaming numbers that are starting to come through globally. And it's driven by singles. But I could also ask for the other one in terms of working with Outdustry. I mean, we tend to work with sort of established international artists, but also we do a lot of work with a client called Merlin. I don't know, some people may be familiar with that. It's kind of the global licensing agency for the independent sector. We set up their deals with all the big DSPs, the big streaming services in China. If you're being released by a distributor who is a member of Merlin, you automatically get to go into all of those platforms. You know, feel free to contact me. I can come and talk to me afterwards, and I can give you some pointers. But we're happy to help people. But quite often, we're not able to help at a kind of professional level, let's say, more sort of a friendly level. But very happy to talk afterwards. Yep.
Thank you very much. Two more questions, please.
I'm sorry, just to add on what you asked about the albums, I don't necessarily think it's a bad idea, I don't want to say that it's, I don't think it's bad necessarily that it's not albums that have been consumed as much. I think, for instance, on our platform, it's the playlists which have sort of loosely replaced. I say replaced, it's not really replaced, but the playlists have now become the thing that you can curate your own content, or someone has curated it for you, and similar to DJ mixes. And that might be also a reason why not many people want, even on an album, I won't listen to all the songs, but I want to be able to have my tastes in like 10, 15, 20 songs in a playlist that will play for the same amount of time as an album, maybe even longer.
Thank you very much. We're going to take 2 questions, 2 only, strictly 2. We have a burning one there and another one here.
Hi. Okay, my name is Ordinare. I'm a content creator and an artist. So my question is like this. Like YouTube, we have we have the piracy thing and all the stuff. Someone can't access your piracy, your music. What about Mdundo? For example, like you put an audio to Mdundo, then in the next time you see same content, your music is trending, but on a different, with a different artist. Is there a place where you can report that issue?
Let me take the second one, then you can say. Okay, the second one, where was it? It's actually two more. Him na huyo jamaa wa white, eh? Amevaa white, sio wa white.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So my question is, I was talking to I'm an artist. My name is Sage. So my question is, okay, I'll start by saying a story first before I ask the question.
Keep it short.
Okay. I was talking with my friend how I'll go to a podcast or a radio station for an interview so that I could market myself. Then he asked me, what does the person in the station, how does he benefit from me? Considering that I don't have a large fan base, I have just a small one, I was left with the question, with the answer, nothing. So what should I do?
Come again?
He asked me the question, how does the person interviewing me, because let's say he's in a radio station or I'm going to the podcast and I don't have a large following. So he asked me the question, what does the other person benefit from me? Because I don't have a big name.
What was your answer?
Nothing. He doesn't benefit.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, the last question.
Hello, I am David. I run a music tech accelerator startup. Basically, the future of the music industry lies notably in the technology. So, but artists are not making money online. We have starving artists. So, gears have shifted. Guys have literally moved from tech is actually the future, but we can't make money from tech. Yes, let us go to live music. So most artists are actually now focusing on getting money from live music. So how do we maximize this use? How do we maximize the use of the digital space so that our artists are well fed and
Okay, thank you very much. The first question was actually directed to you. Sorry?
I kind of forgot the question.
He uploaded something on Mdundo.
Oh, yes.
It was trending in another.
So for Mdundo, if you find your music elsewhere, and so I was going to ask you, is your music anywhere else? Because a lot of the time, which is what happens with a lot of pirate sites, is if anything is on YouTube, there's ways to get it down and have it on other sites. So that's one thing. However, if you're sure that you can upload it to Mdundo alone and now you found it elsewhere, yes, you can contact us, and then we sort of tell you, like, we can't really tell who's downloaded it, but we can tell if it's from Mdundo, that the music has come from, because there's a way we sort of mark our fingerprint our music, so we can be able to tell you, actually, this is a Mdundo link, and we just ask them to take it down. There's another question.
Yeah, the other one, the last one maybe? He was talking about how we can maximize the digital space.
Oh, yes. I love saying this. This is my favorite quote. For artists, I think distribution and selling singles is like your business card. So if you just have your music everywhere, make sure everybody has it. The day you're having a show, people need to know what they're coming to listen to. So use your music as your business card, basically. That's a simple answer.
Good. Okay, the last one. I didn't really get your question. I thought it was a statement, per se. But you said that you were talking to someone and he told you that for you to get an interview, you need to bring something to the radio station. That was your point? Okay.
I mean, I think that's where every artist's journey is gonna start there at some point. I think you got really two options. You're gonna get more no's than yeses. That's just kind of the the hand that you're dealt, the way that the journey is going to go. But the idea then is we'll come back with something. So how do you stand out amongst artists in your genre? What makes you different as a creator? And what's your kind of, not to be so business-like, but what's your competitive advantage, right? You're like, amongst new artists who've broken through in the last 3 months, I know these views don't look like much, but you show me somebody else who's picking up like me. My dance on TikTok right now, you look at the people who are copying that, it was one of their weekend challenges. I think you need me on your show because, I'm about to blow. Obviously, you have to bet on yourself. You got to talk yourself into it. But that confidence, even in the face of that rejection, it's not for it to get you down. That interview, is a question of whether it makes or breaks you. I doubt it. I think your craft and that journey and how you stand out, that's truly where the battle is. The interviews will come. I think it's a matter of time.
Yeah, I think the only thing I'll add is artists need a certain level of shamelessness to be successful. You just need to be really shameless. And one of the best examples for me is the shamelessness of a hawker or a boda boda rider. Hawkers will come and sell you that sweet upende, usipende. The guy is coming, chips inakuanga nini tropical kumi. The guy is coming to your face. He's just going to make you take this thing. I think every artist requires a little bit of that shameless audacity that you approach, even somebody who you know will not buy. You approach them and pitch and, and hope for the best. And the most important thing in all that is you have to be interesting. You have to be interesting, which is why artists have long hair. We paint, we have like more things than bankers. Bankers don't have the things we have because we are trying to create that interest. So it's really important that it might be a little thing, but it's really important. As you know, Beyonce has sold one part of her body for she sold it. Even though there are people who maybe have more talent in that area than she does, she's really sold it. And this is a really important thing for us to see. If you have the little that you have, you've got to really sell that thing as hard as you can, as Mark was saying.
Yeah. And another thing, maybe just to add on what he said, is that as an artist, when it comes to you going out to look for interviews, when I asked you what your answer was, you said your answer was nothing. Have that something. It's just as easy as that. Have that something. Because that's all the media wants. Have that something. Yeah. So thank you very much. A big round of applause to each and every one of you. Yeah, thank you very much to everyone on my panel. And we're going to maybe do some quick closing remarks. And now I can maybe give you like 20 seconds of plugins.
I think the closing remark for me is that we've always, as a company, we do what we call act as if. We act as if all of these systems are in place already, even though they're not there. And that means things like getting your metadata clean, even though people don't really use it in emerging markets at the beginning. But act as if everything is working smoothly, and just get your house in order, because the market is just going to blow up. And you need to be ready, and you need to be practiced at that point already. So just pretend it's blown up already and be super professional about it.
I guess my final remark was people want content. So just keep putting out content, good content. Accept feedback, good or bad, from your crew. Yeah, and just keep going. And Mdundo is always here for you.
I think just when, the internet is your friend, the world is now flat, you'll be surprised how far you can go by looking at that selfie camera and just doing something and showing up with who you are and what makes you special. And every one of you, has that special something. So do that. Don't be too hard on yourself. And, I think just, take care of your mental health, your mind, and put yourself in a place where you can be successful, not looking at the success, but looking at the practice, the craft, and really falling in love with that. I think it's the practice, after all, that every successful person will really tell you is the reason they arrived where they did. Of course, luck also plays a part, so keep that in mind.
Yeah, for me, I think it's that, I'll just say a couple of things. The first is take care of yourself mentally, physically, eat as much as you can. There's no profit in there's no profit in being a hungry artist. You want to finish a song. Does not help. So please eat. The other thing that I really try to push when I discuss with artists, even in my master classes, I need you to read and learn and research as much as you can. You have to listen more than you talk. You have to know the stuff you're going to do, know it better than anybody else. The world is full of artists who don't know things. And where the world is going now, we need artists to know things. Please, you've got to be connected. You've got to be connected. Please live in this world with us and know a lot about this world with us. That will make your content a lot better.
Maybe for me, I'm going to reiterate what he just said. It would be cruel to your life if you decided to go out, maybe to drive without knowing where you are heading to and without knowing how to drive. My point is, for you as a content creator, as an artist, just know what you want, do some research in that, learn everything in whatever you want to do, and know the what, the why, the how, the when of whatever you're going to create. And at the end of the day, you just be consistent, you're going to blow up. So thank you very much. That's all we had for you. I hope you had an amazing evening. It was maybe longer than you expected, but thank you very much for your time.